So Jon Moxley will not be at the G1 Climax show in Dallas. And could it be AEW's fault? We'll talk about it next on the Squared Circle Psychobabble. Hello and welcome to the Squared Circle Psychobabble. My name is Michael Valenti. This is Ralph Valenti. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit that bell for notifications. We're trying to hit 10,000 YouTube subscribers before All Elite Wrestling's All Out. Now, before we get to All Out, Ralph, we have the G1 Climax with New Japan Pro Wrestling, and Jon Moxley, who is a part of All Elite Wrestling, is a participant in this year's G1 Climax, which their first show is going to be in Dallas, Texas. So you figured they have the American-born Jon Moxley there. However, that's not the case. That is not the case. He is actually part of the B block, and the entire B block schedule will happen in Japan. Now, you could just say that just because he's in the B block, that's why he's not going to be at the Dallas show, which has all the A block participants. But according to Dave Meltzer, it was All Elite Wrestling that said that we have the U.S. rights to Jon Moxley, and we're not allowing him to be a part of this show. So How do you take this information? Do you take it with a grain of salt, or do you actually think there's some truth to this?
Yeah, no, I'm sure there definitely is some truth to this because if you think about it, if you're AEW, you want to protect your talent, right? And you want to protect your investments. And I think it would mean a lot for them to really have Moxley's first big match since returning be in an AEW ring. You know, given that he's been granted, it would be in the United States, I should say, in an AEW ring, because we know he's been doing some work with New Japan Pro Wrestling. Obviously, those matches have occurred in Japan, and then he's done some stuff on the independent scene as well. But so I think it's really just them protecting their investment, protecting their talent. I don't think that it's in any way to snub.
What are they protecting him from? Because he's going to be in the G1 tournament, regardless if it's in the U.S. or Dallas.
Yep.
And I mean, I would assume he's not going to win it. So
I wouldn't think he's going to win it either.
So the only way you could tell what they're really protecting him from is what his first match would be in New Japan Pro Wrestling in the G1 Climax. And his first match is against Tai Chi, which is a week later. And honestly, I think that's a win for Moxley. So I don't understand why there's a necessity to protect.
So Moxley, to me, in this whole G1, is undoubtedly the most popular American wrestler.
Right.
I think we can probably all agree on that. Having him wrestle in Japan, while there is going to be some crossover between the people that watch AEW and the people that watch New Japan Pro Wrestling, they're really trying to take AEW to a whole nother level. Now, it could be smart, and it could also be a bad thing for them to do, because one could assume, we'll have him compete in the G1 in Texas, and that would give him some exposure to maybe some different fans, garner some type of interest. But to me, this is really just them saying, okay, you can go do whatever you want as long as it's on the independent scene, if it's outside the United States. But some of these bigger companies like a New Japan Pro Wrestling, we're not going to allow you to compete within the United States with those companies. And the reason for that is this. We always talk about the competition that there's going to be between, AEW and WWE, but we can't forget New Japan Pro Wrestling. New Japan Pro Wrestling is still a driving force within the wrestling industry.
True.
I just think that this is them saying, you know what, you want to feel free to do whatever you want to do outside the United States, go ahead and do it. But if you're going to wrestle stateside within the United States, it's going to happen in an AEW ring. At least if it's going to be for a major promotion, you're going to be representing us. So
now let's flip this around. Now, obviously the report is that Meltzer is saying that AEW was the reason for this.
Yes.
What if New Japan Pro Wrestling are actually the ones that are saying, listen, we have Moxley for a limited amount of dates.
Yep.
So their main audience is, of course, the Japanese audience, being from Japan. When you put Moxley in Dallas, that's one less show that you have him in Japan. So you already know the American audience is going to watch Moxley.
Yeah.
So it's more of an attraction for the Japanese audience. So you get them for that extra show in Japan.
Yep.
So that also, you could also put that into consideration. The other thing is, what if, the G1 tournament, yes, it starts in Dallas, but it finishes in Japan. and the finals is the bigger show. Would you agree with that? The finals is
of
probably
course.
the bigger show.
Yeah. The finals has,
So
definitely.
what if it's in the works that Moxley wins his block and ends up in the finals? Obviously, that match is in Japan.
Right.
So that's another show that they could have him for. I don't know how it would line up with All Elite Wrestling. I think he would be in the clear. I know he has some dates in August with Northeast Wrestling, so maybe he has to move some stuff around,
Right.
or maybe he's actually not going to win the B block because you got Naito and you got Ishii that are heavy favorites to win that block anyway. So it's a very hard situation, but I think all around, obviously AEW wants to protect Moxley. New Japan Pro Wrestling want him as much as they can. I think he's better off in Japan than in the United States, where, if they want to push a certain star, they might not be able to because he's in the United States for that one match, and he will obviously be the favorite for that match. Yeah. If it's, in this case would be Tai Chi, who is his first opponent.
Right.
So maybe they want Tai Chi to have the Japanese crowd on his side. So that's where I'm going with this.
So I definitely will agree with you that having him wrestle in Japan is a smart move for New Japan Pro Wrestling because he's a very recognizable name. He obviously wrestled within the WWE as Dean Ambrose. He was in the Shield, so he's very marketable.
Right.
And for those reasons, I think it would be smart for them to use him or utilize him if allowed within the United States, because we know from everything that they've said previously that they want to move westward. They're trying to expand. And in order to do that, I mean, if you have a guy like Moxley that's so well known, if you have him on a show, whether it's in Texas or whether it's in New York or wherever it is within the United States, you'd think that that's going to draw some extra attention to your product.
It will. But here's the other thing to consider. As I mentioned before, if he's in the United States for that one show, that's one less show that he's in Japan.
Yep.
Now, the show in Dallas is going to be on cable TV that night live on Access TV. So there are going to be people that have that channel that will watch on that channel and save themselves $9.99 or whatever the conversion is that day to watch Moxley.
Yeah.
And that would be their only match. Now, if you want to watch Jon Moxley, you have to subscribe to New Japan World. So now they have that money. So I think that's a good business move for New Japan. And either way, no matter whose decision this is, I think both companies benefit from this, where he ends up, all his matches are in Japan. Mm-hmm. He could stay in Japan, not have to move back and forth and do this and that. And when he needs to come back to the States to do his independent things and All Out, he can. Yep. The other thing that not a lot of people are pointing out is with his first match against Tai Chi is the same day as Fight for the Fallen. So it seems like he'll do his match with Fyter Fest and then he's heading to Japan. Mm-hmm. And you won't see him in AEW until All Out.
Right.
Good move or bad move for Moxley?
Good move for Moxley. I mean, I think everything that he's done to this point since he's been released from the WWE has been some really good moves for his own branding and recognition and really building himself up as anything outside of the character that Dean Ambrose was within the WWE.
Yes.
Doing some of the stuff on the independent scene, working with some of the younger guys, going over to New Japan Pro Wrestling. All this stuff is really smart moves for him because it's expanding his audience. Him going to New Japan and making it where he's not just doing these one-offs, but he's competing in the G1. He's going to be wrestling some really well-known guys. So whether that's, Tony Khan being smart and saying, you know what, go and compete in that because we want to try to attract some of their fans when you come back and wrestle for us full time, and especially when they go to TV and stuff like that. I don't necessarily see it as a bad thing. We know that All Out is going to be their big show. So if he misses some of the smaller shows for AEW, I don't think it's necessarily should be viewed as a bad thing for him or for AEW. It would probably mean more for him to actually compete in the G1 and go far or do well. I don't know necessarily how they're going to book him.
Right.
I because
honestly,
it can kind of go either way, in my opinion.
Right. Based on his block, I mean, he's got Jay White, he's got Juice Robinson, he's got Ishii and Naito. Those are 4 tough matchups right there where I could see him losing any of those 4. to me, I could see him losing 2 in the entire block. I don't know which 2 yet. When we do our G1 Climax preview, I'll have a better indication on what 2 I think they're going to be.
Yep.
But I definitely think this helps him also because he'll have much more time in the ring, whereas his opponent for All Out, Kenny Omega, who knows what he's doing Fighter Fest. He's doing Fight for the Fallen. But what's he doing between Fight for the Fallen and All Out? That's 2 months.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yes, we're talking about the best bout machine, but, you know, chemistry in the ring doesn't just happen.
Yeah.
You know, you gotta work on that. And if Moxley's in Japan and Omega's in the United States, when are they going to work? I mean, you don't necessarily have to work on your match for 2 months, but what are they doing to help make that match a good one for All Out? Because that match has to deliver.
Well, it's not only that. I mean, one of my biggest concerns, especially with Omega and Jericho, was the amount of time that they were going to be out of the ring.
Right.
You know, Jericho, he wrestles maybe 5, if that, matches a year now.
True.
So keeping himself in shape to go in the ring, and you know, he didn't have a bad performance by any means at Double or Nothing, and neither did Kenny Omega. But you know, it's not like Kenny Omega is not old, but he's certainly not young in terms of, I guess, wrestling years, I guess.
He's 36, I believe.
So, you know, he keeps himself in shape. That's obvious by his physique and stuff like that. But the one thing, if you always hear wrestlers when they're trying to come back, the one thing they always comment on is getting back into shape for, you know, the wrestling itself, the ring work. It's very hard to get yourself back into shape for in-ring competition. So, you know, the time away can certainly hurt Kenny Omega. It can also hurt any other wrestler for that matter too. I wouldn't expect him to come in out of shape.
Now, I do want to bring up this one last point. We talk about if this is true that All Elite Wrestling is preventing Moxley to show up at the G1 Dallas show.
Yeah.
Now, a little while back, we talked about how WWE prevented Tony Storm from having a match with B. Priestley because of the outcome that could have happened where an AEW signed wrestler would have beaten the NXT United Women's Champion, the NXT UK Women's Champion. There, got it right that time. And there was obviously a lot of backlash towards WWE. We get to Double or Nothing, and Dragon Gate stops Pac from having his match with Hangman Page because of creative differences. And Dragon Gate and Pac got some backlash for it. If this is true with AEW, I mean, I've been checking social media. I don't see as much backlash towards AEW. Should there be similar backlash to AEW as there is with WWE and Dragon Gate in their situation?
I think the main difference with this is you're still getting Moxley competing in the G1. Had it been where he announced, okay, I'm going to wrestle in the G1, and AEW was like, hold it. Nope, you're not doing that. I think people would.
But Tony Storm still had a match on the card with Stardom, and Pac and Page still had their match, just not at Double or Nothing.
Yeah. Well, I think no matter what WWE does, I think they're kind of pigeonholed to where people are always going to ridicule them.
That's my point.
I mean, I don't think WWE product has been, I think it's been bad for quite some time. I thought Raw was bearable last night. And I'm sure if we went online and looked at polls and read other reviews and stuff like that, most people would pick it apart and say it was terrible and say it's the worst show, which...
It's funny you brought that up because I did actually do a poll on our community page where I asked if Raw was good. So the choices were yes, better than usual, typical Raw, or AEW.
Yep.
And of course, with our audience, I think it was like 71% voted AEW.
Yeah. Well, that's expected. I mean, my mind isn't going to change. I'm ready to see something fresh. I'm ready to see something different. Just because Raw was decent for 1 week, doesn't mean I'm changing my mind that I'm ready to see some type of different product. But to me, it's just like, especially with WWE, people are going to nitpick whatever they present. So if WWE chose to take Tony Storm out of a match and the match didn't happen, people are obviously going to point to that and say, oh, see, they're up to their old tricks. If AEW did something like this, they'd probably get a pass for it.
Right. So why are they getting a pass, but WWE isn't?
No one ever picks on the cool kid in school. That's how it is.
I don't know. Let us know what you guys think of the whole situation between Jon Moxley and the G1 Climax at Dallas. Do you wish he was there? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, share it all over social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at SCPB Podcast. Subscribe and hit that bell for notifications as we're trying to hit 10,000 YouTube subscribers before All Elite Wrestling's All Out. For Ralph Valenti, my name is Michael Valenti, and thank you for watching the Squared Circle Psychobabble.